Mr. Sam. That's why I set that up there for you. Yes, we have. You got a corner up? Yes. Okay. Bring one? Yep. Okay. We had you one laid up here. No. Did you get your pointer?
Yeah, that's 10.
Okay. Okay, this is a slide changer. You need to change the slide. Okay. That's fine. It's not? Okay. I'll just help. Just ask him. That's fine. That's fine. I'll take that back up. That way I stay out of trouble. All right. This one's an easy one. Just one ear. Okay. You say so? Yeah. One ear.
Testing.
Okay. Put that right there in your.
I'll put it in this little pocket.
There you go. All right. I'm going to go upstairs and mute you. Just.
Did you get a copy of the agenda?
Yes.
Okay, so Mark's gonna pray, and then I'm gonna just probably 3 minutes.
He's got me muted so I can talk to you.
Okay, all right. I don't think that one is, so.
Good afternoon. I'm Mark Hester. This is Sam Mosher, and Lee Lamb. We're going to be your presenters of our congregational meeting. I see by the hour we've got about 1 minute, so I'm going to drag my feet here just for a second, see if anybody else comes in. So we're streaming this on YouTube. Have I got that right? And we had some difficulties with Facebook this morning, so if one of the things you looked at if you were listening to streaming, you probably we're not getting very good sound bite because all the sound, unless you were live in the sanctuary, was coming over a telephone. It wasn't coming through your normal channels. So our apologies for that, and we apparently weren't the only church having a problem with that today. So hopefully Facebook will get that fixed. And but we're glad you're here this afternoon. And if you didn't pick up one of the schematics by the back door, be sure and grab one. So I'm going to call this meeting to order and welcome. And I wanted to tell you that from the Confession of Faith, which I have right here before me, I wanted to remind you that a congregational meeting of the members of a church shall be convened for the following purposes, and there are about 5 purposes, and one of them is to provide an opportunity for communication between the session and the congregation on other matters, but there is no procedure for voting. So we're not here to vote. Actually, the Sanctuary Building Committee that was appointed, and Lee will go into that, back, 12 years ago, was actually made a recommendation to session. Session approved that recommendation, and what you're going to see today is our approved model to proceed with, but we are interested in you getting all your questions answered and giving us any input that we can hear and know if we need to make any alterations along the way. So that's the purpose of the meeting, and direct your questions to Lee or to Sam, whichever Lee prefers, and then once Sam wraps up his presentation, then I'll lead us in question and answer that has nothing to do with Sam, but might be questions about financing and the cost and stuff like that, and I'll help you with that. All right, let's open with a word of prayer. Oh God, we thank you for calling us to be your church. We thank you that we are in a church home in a community called Loudon with a people called Cumberland Presbyterian who know that we are part of the body of Christ. And so we ask, oh great God, that you will continue giving us the mind of Christ to see the will and way, to know what we're supposed to do with a building and which way to turn a chair and which light to turn on where, and all the little details that we can't even imagine. We ask, oh great God, that you give us insight and wisdom so that we're doing something great for the many generations to follow that will be here to worship you, and that all we do glorify you. This we pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Turn it over to Lee.
Good afternoon. I'm Lee Lamb. I'm the chairperson of the Sanctuary Building Committee, and on behalf of our committee, I would like to present our report. So the Sanctuary Task Force was formed by session in July of 2019. Our mission was to acquire professional recommendations to upgrade and update our sanctuary. The task force presented a report to the session. They chose Main Street Studios in Sweetwater in November of 2019 to design our renovation. The task force was dissolved by session in January of 2020 and was replaced by our committee. The first meeting of our Sanctuary Building Committee was February 4th, 2020, with Sam Mosier in attendance. A contract was signed for phases A and B for a total of $19,000. On March 17th, 2020, our session voted to cancel all worship services, events, and committee meetings due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Our committee meetings then resumed on June 25th, 2020, with COVID precautions in place, with Sam presenting design number 1. After this meeting, there were 5 additional committee meetings, some with the elders invited, over a period of 11 months to review and refine designs 2 through 4. On May 6, 2021, our committee unanimously voted to recommend to our session the current design presented today. And then on May 18th of 21, our session met and approved this design. Why renovate our church sanctuary, you say? Well, we know we need to upgrade the electrical system. It's undersized. We need to add handicap seating. We need to increase congregation seating and aisle access for weddings, funerals, and our sharing of the peace. And we need to enlarge the stage and choir area. We also need to create handicapped accessible class restrooms and create usable basement area and handicapped accessible restrooms downstairs. We also need to create audiovisual space for technology. And as always, our goals through this process have been to keep the historic features and character of our sanctuary and to ensure the preservation of our sanctuary for future generations. I would like to recognize our committee members, Barry Baker, Greg McNabb, Merritt Brakeville, Katie Parkin, Lisa Cheney, Ken Parkin, Noah Dutton, Kim Wilkes, Megan Hull, Reverend Mark Hester, Bart Littleton, and Duncan Shelton. So finally, I would like to say we are so excited to finally present this design. It's been a long 2 years, but we hope that you will enjoy and see the design that we have presented today. And it is my pleasure to present Sam Mosier, who will walk us through our design.
All right, Lee. Am I hot? Not me personally, just the mic. Sorry, guys. That was a really bad intro. See if your red light is on. The red light is on. Hello? Nothing like technology. It's great when it works, right? All right. Is this where I start singing? That was a bad joke that I use every time that I get up in front. So you guys are new, so I can use that same bad joke on you guys. I promise this committee did not ask me, and nor am I receiving payment, but it has been an honor and a pleasure working with your committee. We work with a lot of groups, from school boards to city boards to church boards, and you guys really do have some of the finest folks. And it has been a pleasure, even through COVID, that we all had to battle. This group has remained professional and focused on trying to come up with the best path forward, I think, for this church. And that's what I'm going to present today. I told Lee and Mark when I got here in preparing for this meeting, in making the list to go through, we've touched almost 25 pieces, parts, and components of this facility. And what I will try to do from the front door to the back door to the side door is walk our way through all of those pieces and parts and components. I'm not sure if you'd prefer me to present and go all the way through, then we can go back. That way we flow through all of those pieces and parts. But if you have a question, please jot it down, and then we can revisit. Bart and Ken up there have been my Vanna Whites for me. They turn my letters, they turn my pages, they zoom in and out. So if I ask them to do that, it's a dance that we have performed through several presentations. So the slide you see before you, and I'm going to be talking to you guys and then turning to the screen and try to point in the area. But the very first component, we're going to kind of start at the front door. One of the first things that we started looking at and talking about is the foyer area. Now, in looking at the foyer area, what you will see here is a new set of double doors. Now, when you enter into the foyer, you enter in the double doors and then you go through the side. One of the things that we looked at with this approach is in creating a strong center aisle approach. It really starts at that front entry. So we would renovate this foyer, and in enclosing this side, we can actually get a few more seats into the sanctuary. Another item that we have looked at is in tucking this area here for the new audio-visual soundboard. It would put this area in the back of the church. It would put them in an area where they could see, where they could hear, but it would be tucked into an area that would be out of the way, and they could monitor the service, the volume, the lights, et cetera, et cetera. So that would be kind of the second component there for the AV, the audio-visual sound control area. Now, one of the things that I would like to do, and I apologize, I meant to do this from the very beginning, Bart and Ken, if you could zoom out and show the whole plan, I wanted to kind of set the precedence. So in looking at the perimeter of the building here, this notch here and this notch here represents the end of the original building, the original sanctuary, and then where the Sunday school part or offices begin. Does that make sense for you guys? So what we were able to do is, in growing the sanctuary and in growing the stage area, this is where we did it. So what we're looking at doing is taking this area out here and then moving back. So for reference point, from this notch here back is the sanctuary area, and from this notch forward is offices, classrooms, etc. now. So what did we do to the sanctuary, and how did we accomplish this? So we're in the front door, we've tucked in AV, and we've got a central aisle. Now, what we have now, I think, is 2 aisles, and the pews go all the way to the wall. If you look here, the central aisle is 6 feet wide. The side aisles here are 3 feet wide. What that new alignment, what that new layout gives you guys is ADA wheelchair access anywhere in and around the sanctuary seating. But what it also does, do you guys know the old rule of 80 to 85% in seating congregation? Once you get to 85%, you may pack them in on Christmas, you may pack them in on Easter, but a lot of people aren't going to scoot up. So what this side aisle allows is multiple ways to get into a pew and out of a pew. So this helps with circulation as far as seating and as far as flow. So increasing this sanctuary, you may ask, what did it benefit and what did it gain us? So the square footage of the existing sanctuary was approximately 1,600 feet, 1,610 square feet. In the renovation, we are now at 2,567 square feet. So the area increase of your overall seating area increased by 37%. Now, in seating individuals, by code, there's a certain width that we've got to calculate for pew runs. So in calculating what was there versus the new space, the original seating capacity by code, and I do air quotations, by code, was 169, okay? So what we were able to gain is 218. So the percentage of that is we were able to grow the sanctuary seating by approximately 25%, okay? So going back to the overall sanctuary area on the plan, all of those areas and all of those percentages are kind of wrapped up in the area that I'm highlighting. The other thing that was mentioned is, excuse me, throughout this entire facility, even on the lower level, we now have ADA wheelchair access in, around, and through the building. So we were able to accomplish that with this renovation as well. So that square footage, that seating is in here. And these areas here that you see, these are areas where a wheelchair can actually be set inside the notch of the pew areas. So what we've done is, we've placed one in the front, a couple in the middle, and 2 in the back. So we've dispersed 8 areas that could be, accommodate 8 wheelchairs. Now, one of the things we can do with seating is we can make that seat that it could be interchangeable. It could be just a regular seat, or you could take it out and it'd be an open space. So I just wanted to point that out to you guys in that area. All right, moving forward, in the altar area, you'll see these 3 tables here. What those tables represent is the tables for the handbells. Through the committee, the handbells is a major part of this church. So what we were able to do in increasing the seating and in the altar area is accommodate those tables with the area of growth. Also, what we have tried to do is increasing the stage and increasing the choir and increasing the area for the piano and the organ. We were able to get the piano and organ up on the stage, whereas now I think one sits down and one is up. So we were able to accommodate both of those components here. The other thing about whether it's your resident, whether it's your business, or whether it's your church, what's the number one problem? Storage. There's never enough, ever. But one of the things that we have done in looking at this new build is, if you see this dash area here, right there, what we are planning to do is that is a storage area that can be put under the stage areas. And the best use of this type of storage that's kind of shallow but deep is we could accommodate the storage of risers that can be put up, broke down, and stored just a few feet away. These risers, I think, was one of the discussion about special programs, getting more people on stage, getting kids on stage, and still being able to see. Those risers based off of code, based off of accommodations, could accommodate 18 more individuals. Okay? So the risers here, coupled with the choir area here, could accommodate up to 48 people on stage, along with the piano, along with the organ. Okay? So those numbers kind of blend together or can be used at individual components. So we know that the sanctuary grew by a certain percentage. We know that the seating grew by a certain percentage. We've accommodated 18 additional people on stage with this growth, but we also increase just this central area of the stage by almost 10%. So in going back and remembering how we're using this existing space here to grow, all these areas was able to increase. Now, one of the things that I want to point out that's, I feel for me, just coming into this church, is we were able to accommodate the pipe organs. That is a central focus of this church, and I believe is pretty historic. That will always, what we have done is plan for that component to always be a piece and part of this renovation and growth. But in doing that and looking at all those components and what we keep and what we modify, I wanted to point that out as a point of what we have kept. So from this area back, what I want to point out is 2 additional areas for storage. Whether it's choir, whether it's handbell, whether it's sanctuary, we were able to accommodate a storage here and then a closet storage here as well. One of the things that you'll see in this back area, you'll notice a set of steps here. Because of the way that we have the choir area on risers so that everyone can project that beautiful voice into the sanctuary, each one of these areas is a step up. So when the choir filters in, they've got to be up at this level. But here, we have used this side area or aisle area to accommodate the installation of an ADA accessible ramp. And as you see, tucked here is the stairs up. But once you start here and rise up, all this area here is on the same level. This area from here starts to rise up with the steps, and then these steps of access meet it in the back. So what we've tried to do is accommodate multiple things with the steps, with the risers, with the ramp, to accommodate as much or all as absolutely possible, okay? Now, one of the things that is new is this back area here. And when I say new, everything that we've talked about to this point has taken place within. Ken and Vanna's reading my mind. So if you could zoom out so we could see the whole thing, that'd be a great indication. So the color coding of all the light blue here, that is within the existing perimeter as you see the church right now. The only new additions, exterior additions, is the small sliver of green here in the back, which is the back stair access that will allow circulation from this level down to the lower level. We will bump out in the back just enough to accommodate the stair, but also what we will be able to do is accommodate a janitor's closet for mop, sink, cleaning supplies, etc., for the sanctuary level. Okay? So the light blue is all existing. The green is new, and we'll get to this area next. But I think in working through, just in recap before we move on to the lower level, is central aisle, central entry, AV crow's nest soundboard area, increase seating, ADA access around the aisles, area for handbells, increased stage, piano, organ, storage, 30 in the choir, 18 in the risers, and ADA access, additional storage, and basement access. So let's go now back to the original plan and zoom in on this area here. Okay? So in following, this is the existing edge of the back. I'm calling it the Sunday school section. I don't know if that's the official name, but the back area of the church. What we were able to do in trying to connect the sanctuary to this new facility without having to go outside, but yet still meeting ADA accessibility, is the following. What we would do is create a side entry here that would come to a landing and steps down into a lower landing foyer. But from this level, because of the height difference, we would have to have a switchback ramp here that would be enclosed. This ramp would be an enclosed structure that would come into a foyer, and then we could go into basically this building that we're in with a separate entry. Also on this level, we can now accommodate a men's and women's ADA accessible restroom that can be accessed from the sanctuary that is ADA accessible. And it's either via this ramp here or here, okay? Now, one of the things that we were able to do in connecting the existing sanctuary with the new annex building is we were able to accommodate a Wharf Street back entry, okay? Coming off of this sidewalk, we can come into a lower level foyer area, and then with stairs coming up, we can accommodate access from Wharf Street. As my wife likes to say, Sam, you tell way too much, but I got to share with you, the only point that we don't have ADA access is kind of from Wharf Street. We looked at several options on this, but to get a lift in that area, it was already so tight. But in the ADA world, you just have to have one access. So we meet all points of egress, ingress, but I just wanted to point that out. But it still gives you circulation through this space from front courtyard to back street, as well as side to side. I also want to point out, in moving forward, we've looked at some initial code items that when we, Bart and Ken, can you zoom out just a little bit? Katie, I do apologize. All right, perfect, Katie. So in the outline of the existing building, an existing sanctuary, this is the outline of what I'm calling the annex building. When these two touch each other, all that square footage becomes one building, okay? So to accommodate making changes to the sanctuary, touching this building, what we propose so that we don't have to do more than we actually need to is this wall here would basically be a building separation wall that from the new build into the annex, this building separation wall will create a break. So this is one building and this is still one building. And what that wall does is it gives us some flexibility without having to generate or create extra work required by code because of the total square footage of the two combined. That wall still allows us to look at those buildings as two separate buildings, okay? So that's what this element is here. So once again, in summary, those are the pieces, parts, and components that over the last several months, the committee, we looked at each and every one of those and went through multiple iterations to get to this point today. So in looking at my list, I think we've touched on everything on the main level. If not, we can come back to it. But now, Katie, if we'll go to the basement floor, then we'll come back to the sections. So the basement area, once again, just as a point of reference, this point back is the back area. This is the crawl space under the sanctuary, this grayed out area. So remember, we're doing the stair addition back here that will enclose circulation from the lower level to the upper level. This will be an entry off Wharf Street, which will come into a landing. And if you remember right now, you have to step down immediately as you come in that existing door. What we're doing here is off of the sidewalk into this landing area is create a set of stairs down, but in this lower level, we have accommodated the area where a lift can be placed. And what What this does for us is it gives ADA accessibility, but with the height difference, it doesn't eat up the basement with a ramp. Let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4. We're about 3 feet plus or minus. To meet ADA accessibility with a ramp, it would take up about 30 to 36 lineal feet of ramp. So what we've done is create this landing area where an ADA lift can be installed now or could be installed later. So that was the point of giving ADA accessibility to every level of your facility in this renovation. So once you come down to this area, we've tucked in a couple of ADA restrooms, and then this lower level would have a large choir and handbell practice room here, still retaining the entry to the crawl space to get into the mechanical areas under the existing sanctuary. But we've also accommodated another meeting room downstairs, and then this corner is packed full of mechanical and plumbing as it is now. So we've just kind of retained that corner as a mechanical space. So with this area and the sanctuary area, these are the two levels that kind of remain as part of this overall sanctuary, choir, and lower level basement renovation. The only two components that I want to show you guys is a longitudinal section and then a cross section. So Katie, if you'll go back to that one and then just zoom out, I can touch on this one first. So what this drawing represents is literally we take the sanctuary, cut it down the middle, and we're looking into the side of the structure. So what you see is the entry, then you see the front doors, and then you see the new doors into the central aisle area. And then this level here represents the step up into the AV area on the other side of the entry. Now this area here kind of represents where that back Sunday school area starts and stops now. And here you can see how we've opened that up and moved for right now, from this point forward, all of this is here forward. So this is how we've gained that area, is by taking out that back wall of the sanctuary and just moving everything forward. But this is a cross-section of the stage area, step up, kind of the railing and banister as it is right now, still retaining the area and the space that you have, the height, the shape of the ceiling, still having the stained glass windows exposed. And then this represents the area below that cuts through the restroom and the choir area. And this represents the steps and entry into that landing area off of Wharf. And then this represents the stairs going up, and then that back storage closet and hallway there in the back in section profile. Okay? Now there's one more cross section, and what this cross section is, Katie, if you don't care, will you just zoom into this one right here? All right. So this cross section is basically cut right in front of the stage area, looking at the podium and looking at the organ. So this kind of represents the existing archway that's there. The dash area represents the pipes of the organ. These areas indicate the height of the stage, the banisters. This dash area represents the risers, as on the choir side, how you would step up. Those are behind that podium. And then these areas shown here would be a placement location for monitors to be placed within the sanctuary. And at this point, there's still a number of avenues, a number of ways to approach AV information, screens, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there's as many as the day is long. But just as a placeholder in moving the back where the arch is and the area that's left over, and using the existing profile and shape of the roof, we have plugged in an area where monitors could now be placed. So, in closing, I think from start to finish, we've touched almost 25 different components, areas, from the smallest of putting in a double door to the opening up of the existing sanctuary. We went through, I think, 4 or 5 reiterations to get to this point. I'll be the first one to tell you, I haven't walked on water lately, and I don't care to try, because all of us in this room know what they did to the guy that did walk on water. However, we are open to any and all questions that you may have. Lee accuses me of being too accommodating, but I always told him, I said, I'll stay for supper if you need me to. But Katie, if you could go back to the overall kind of floor plan and kind of zoom out there where you can see kind of all that area. I will open up the floor for any questions at this time. I don't know if Mark fills them, or I fill them, or Lee fills them, but
well, we'll probably have Sam fill them. So questions that have to do with the architectural drawings, I'll bring the mic to you so everybody can hear.
I was just wondering right now, the one place that that's not handicap acceptable, that men's Bible study, that outside wall is the only 2 handicap parking spots around here. Has anybody thought about having to move those handicap parking spots to somewhere else?
I'm not sure that's one of your assignments that's been given to you, but we can address that here in just a minute. But you can reiterate that people that are parked on the Wharf Street side, they have to maneuver steps to come in. That's what you're talking about? Well, they have those steps now and a ramp, right? Okay. We'll address that here separately.
That may be as easy as just relocation of accommodating of parking stalls, but it's a very, very good point. Thank you very, very much.
And I don't think it has been brought up, so thank you for bringing it up.
Yeah, Sam, I just had a question. The new addition, in other words, the part of the building is going to be expanded out that's not part of the existing sanctuary. Do you have a cross-section that shows what that roof line is going to look like where it ties into the fellowship hall?
We have not looked at that at this point in time, but one of the things I want this congregation to know is, if we move forward tomorrow or we move forward 20 years from now, the last thing that I personally want, and you guys too, is anything that's added to this church to take away or detract from it. Any of the architecture that we move forward with, the detailing of that component will match as closely as possible to the existing facility as absolutely possible. But at this time, we were only looking in space planning type scenarios, but that is something that we will develop moving forward. The other thing that I wanted to touch on real quick, we didn't have a survey, but what we did is we came out and using the existing outside components, steps and risers, we came up with the information that we're working with. One of the things that will help us moving forward too is a site survey, that when we do cut that cross section, we will have the exact profile to work from.
Sam, what is the thinking of chairs in the choir loft as opposed to pews?
That's something that we talked about. What I did, and it's hard to see there, but we put in chairs in there to show you how many chairs you could get, and or pews. So that's still something that I think the committee is weighing the difference of, but that is correct. In that presentation, we put chairs in to show you what that would look like.
Decision hadn't been finalized on that. Yeah. Bob, did you have a question?
I guess this ought to be directed to Lee. What did the National Registry Group, did they okay it, or how do they feel about it?
Well, Sam, do you want to answer that, or shall I?
Well, go ahead, and then I'll add to it.
As far as we know, the National Register listing is not going to be affected in any way, but we have not run that by Nashville as yet. So that's something that we will definitely have to, as I understand it, would have to do prior to any other plans. Is that correct?
That is correct. I mean, to this point, we have merely looked at the interior renovation and the space planning. In moving forward, we would straight away contact the Historic Preservation Office and tell them what we were doing. And with any addition, we will, like I say, be as respectful as possible. Now, not as possible, we will be respectful and meet the original architecture. There are accommodations for renovations and additions. We will have to follow their guidelines, but we have not presented the plan to them yet. But that is encompassed in our scope of work, is to work, team, and submit to the Historic Preservation Office.
Who said Mark?
Okay, this may be for Lee too, I don't know. But in thinking of storage, I don't know if y'all noticed upstairs, there's one room that has all the Christmas stuff in it. Did y'all think about that and where that would go? Good.
We know that there's a tremendous need for storage. And so we have, even our CPW is seeking storage at this time, but we know that there's going to be an issue with that. Right now, the tree is stored upstairs here in the fellowship hall. So I don't know, we're just going to have to
the
work
area,
on it.
I was going to say, let me, as far as, I've got a square footage of the storage that we have shown as far as accommodation. If you can give me just a minute, I'll flip to.
As he's digging for that, I will say that the committee's work was what to do with that building, not what to do with this building. And we didn't spend a lot of time thinking of what could we move from here to there in that regard. But the committee did discuss it. It's just that we didn't give it to Sam to work on.
As far as specific items of storage, we never got into that detail, but storage was addressed and discussed. Right now, the storage that is shown in these plans is 150 square foot. Now, what that kind of accommodates to is a 10 by 15 area for storage that is here. As far as additional storage, there would be area, probably an 8 by 8 within that mechanical space as well. That mechanical space is probably twice the area that is down there now. So there is some kind of built-in storage within that as well. So between 150 and 200 square feet of storage is what we have here. But as far as the components of what goes in that, we didn't discuss.
And that doesn't count the under the stage.
That's correct.
That'd be under the stage would be additional, right?
Now, here's something that in going through this, and you guys are hearing this for the very first time, and I hope I don't scare Mark and Steve.
Drum roll, please.
One of the things that say this project moves forward tomorrow, Katie, would you care to take it back to the section, the cross section of the church? I promise, Mark, I'm always thinking about you guys.
I know where you're going with this.
This back area here, this grayed out area that's pochade, that's the negative area that's left over as we move all of this back. Structurally thinking and structurally speaking, we're going to take out these floors, but we still need a diaphragm to stiffen and frame those existing walls. In that diaphragm, we could accommodate some additional storage there, and the only downside is you do it one of two ways. You could do the old pull down, which you could do a very nice pull down and it be a straight run. I'm not talking about the folding wood. Or we could look at, do we take the stairs on up one more level on the back and accommodate just accessing, I was about to do my pointer here, it doesn't do y'all any good, that little area there. So that is another flex area that we can look at if we move forward, with what we have been in our realm is called schematic design. Even though we've got hardline drawings, it's a lot of sketch work. Moving into the next phase, which is called design development, we start looking at what's the size of that framing member. Where do we need that structural diaphragm? But that is a point that would or could address storage that we can definitely look at. So,
any other questions? Yes.
They ever considered replacing that? It was.
Yeah, the slate roof was replaced about 3 years ago with a 50-year warranty, I believe. Does that sound right? Yeah. Yeah. The leak should be fixed. I haven't seen anything coming through. But. All right, any other questions for Sam? If not, we're going to let Sam go home. And any more questions for Sam while he's here? How are we going to access the steeple, Sam? Right now we access it in the very front, just going straight up.
That, as far as I know, nothing really changed with that. The only renovation that we did is on the, if you're looking at the back of the church on the, thank you, if we only had a plan to look at, the AV storage there, and then creating this access. I know there's a hatch here. Is that hatch what's in question?
That hatch, for those of you that don't know, there is a door in the wall right there, but I think most people have historically accessed it from a hole in the roof.
Here?
Going up in the ceiling of the foyer. Am I right?
Bart?
You do it on the side. So it's a side door, a side hatch.
It's here, correct? Because when the structural engineer was here, he got up into this. Now, one of the things that I know when you're working with churches before, and I'm going to make an assumption, is in accessing this hatch, you've got the pews there. In a lot of places, there are platforms that can be prefabricated to just sit down over those pews, and then the ladder could be put on top of that. That's something that I know has been done in the past, and basically that platform is padded, and when set down, you have that stable secure area to put the ladder on to access that hatch, that was there. But as far as right now, there wasn't really anything from the door and that side entry that was really changed from say 10 feet up. We didn't do anything at that area.
Still have the bell.
Yes.
Other questions? Sam, thank you.
Sam, I do have one question. If you feel comfortable answering it, could you just briefly summarize the results of the structural evaluation?
Okay. Lee's got a copy, so what you're getting is old man memory. Ain't what she used to be. But from Rob Hauser is with Bender and Associates. I've worked with Rob ever since I've been out of school, way back in '92, so over 30 years almost. Rob Hauser's company is the structural engineer that's doing the work on the courthouse here in town. So Rob knows historic buildings. So there was, in his inspection and in his walkthrough, the good part is there was really nothing within that sanctuary and structure that gave him any angst or anxiety or issue. It was what he found and what he saw, other than a couple of things, was your standard 100 years of use and growth. But in moving forward, the one thing that he did say is over 100 plus years, do the math, is the walls can be pushed a little bit, and with that slate roof, there was some walls, that had moved a little bit. As far as there is nothing structurally that it is an issue. One of the things that we'll look at is placing some ties moving forward that will help that. The other area that he did find is in the lower level area in the crawl space, where over time, we don't really have a record of when it was done, but a lot of times what they would do is they would go under facilities, excavate out, and then they would move in the old coal, boiler for the chute. Some of that material has been excavated too far over and too close to the interior wall. So our recommendation is to do a short wall and backfill. There's some existing openings in the crawl space too that were opened up for duct sizes. We're just going to enclose those. But in the back area, the existing structure is still solid and still in good condition. So based on the years and the age of this church, these components were right on with the age of the building or very, very minor. So it was a very good report, and moving forward, we will encompass those minor changes and adjustments into the renovation projects. Okay. And like I say, just to double check me, I know Lee has the written report, but that's what I can remember.
Okay, anybody else think of something else to ask? We'll keep talking for a few more minutes, and as long as we need to, but thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys very much.
Give him a hand of approval here. You want to add anything, or shall I go straight to Q&A? Yeah. Sam, you can make your way out as quickly or slowly as you want to. We're glad you were here. All right, so addressing, going back to your question, Audrey, about have we considered, what we would do for that parking. I think there's an ongoing conversation of what are we going to do about parking long-term, period. We've had the privilege of luxury, I guess I should say, that First Baptist has been closed more than open, and we've not been vying for parking places. If they start growing again, we're going to still be vying for parking places. And so we've got to figure that out. And handicap is part of it. If we utilize the connector between the buildings, which I think everybody thinks, well, that's great, and that's a good place to put the restrooms, can we get a ADA lift there without compromising the size of the restrooms and things like that? So I think all that is something that will certainly be ongoing in conversation. Good point. Anybody else have questions about what the committee has done and what's before us? Yes. Next question. Where's Steve? Yeah, I'm gonna let Steve give you the news on that. But I will say that there is a plan by the session on how we're going to start a building campaign and what we're going to do and all that. It has not been published yet. We wanted to have a congregational meeting and get feedback, communication from you guys. But Steve does have some numbers. I'll let him share it.
A few months ago, Lee, Laura McConkey, and myself met with Sam and the structural engineer, and we climbed up in the attic. We looked at this building. We went underneath. We crawled under there and dug around and got in spider webs, and it was hot that morning. It was very hot upstairs, and it's kind of humid and dusty downstairs. But we looked, and the structural engineer gave us a good report that day, and also his written report. We got done, and we were standing on the other side of the church there, and the question that we've all been scared to talk about is what it was going to cost. And I asked Sam that day, we all have got numbers in our head that we've been thinking about but not talking about much. And I asked Sam that day, I said, Sam, what's a rough number on this? What are we looking at? We all hear about building cost, inflation. That's an everyday conversation that I have with somebody every day about how building costs are going up. Supposedly lumber is settling out, coming back down. But a lot of these things will never go back to where they were. Construction costs are higher today than they've ever been. They will never go back to where they were. They may settle down a little bit. But anyway, I asked Sam, and he said, this is not a quote, this is not exact, but my guess is about 1.3 to 1.5 million. And so we looked and shook our heads. He said, this is not official, this is not, but he said, I'm just giving you that. So a couple weeks ago, he gave us the official one. Now, this is not a bid, this is not a quote, this is his projection. And it came back 2.5 to 2.7. And we all just sunk, those that got the numbers. He came back last night and said he'd made a mistake. And I won't go through the mistakes, but it was in some of his calculations. He was on vacation when he was doing some of this. Some other folks were helping him with that. But the number he has given, I've got a few copies here. And remember, this is not a quote, a bid. This is an estimate, and we're at about 2 million to 2.2, 2.3 for what we're talking about. Now, questions. The committee's done a lot of work. The session's done a lot of work. The work has just begun. Now, the session, we need input from everybody because we're all in this together. If we want to do this, we've got to all be in it together. It's a long, big project. There's no doubt that we've got to do something to our sanctuary to preserve it for the future. We've got to do something. Do we have to do this? No, we don't have to. Do we want to? That's for us to decide. And that's for us to decide if we can afford it, and then we're all in this together, and we're all going to work on it together and do it. So, Russ?
That include the architectural and engineering costs plans and everything as well?
I think that estimate is for all that planning and engineering, the construction, but not the furnishings, not the new pews, not new furniture.
Not completing the architecture.
It's not completing the architecture?
No, it's
Okay.
separate. The architecture's separate.
Okay.
It may be in there in that range, but I think that's, we're still $100,000 away from finishing the architectural part. I will comment that, as I understand it, and everybody that's been riding this horse with me all through this can correct me and guide me here if I get off, but basically the architect has a number of things to accomplish in design before we even take bids. We're not through with that. We got slowed down because of COVID. We started back up. We've completed 2 phases of how many? 6? 6 stages. We've completed 2 with the architect. All 6 would have to be completed. We have to go to Presbyterian and get their approval for us to take on such a project like this. They only meet twice a year, in spring and fall. Will probably be the spring of next year at the earliest that we can take something to them, and it may be fall of next year before we can take something to them to ask for approval. But we can take bids, we just can't sign contracts at some point in time. And what the committee has recommended, Steve represents not only chair of the Finance Committee, but also chair, and Lou Ann's also vice chair of the Sanctuary Financing Committee. And so we've had the session approve a plan where we're going to take pledges starting in the fall, and more information will come out on that, and we're going to encourage people to start giving money and committing money to this project starting January 1. Now, interestingly enough, our treasurer, Barry, tells us that some people are already contributing to it. We haven't even shown the plan still today. But some people are already contributing to it. They're excited about it. But this is a process, and I don't know whether it was Sam that said it or Steve or whoever said it. We're talking about just continuing to roll the ball on this. And the congregation, if you're supportive of it, you need to tell the session that you are. If you're not supportive of it, you can tell the session that you aren't. But the session would have to change their vote, which at this point is to proceed. But the next step is simply to go to the next phase for the architect and finish those stages and start trying to pledge and raise money and see how much money we might raise before we actually need to write a check. Does that sound right? Questions to elders, finance team, me, anybody?
We need and want everybody's input, everybody's opinion. It's important. It's a big project. It's a long-term project, but we need input, and we want everybody to be involved, and we're listening. And you don't have to do that right now. You can do that anytime, but let us know what you think.
Got the offering plate ready at the door. It is very important that we want everyone in the church that's a part of the church, feels like they're part of the church to make a obligation to a pledge, but it doesn't have to be limited to just money. For those that might not have money to contribute, they can make an obligation to pray. They can make an obligation to be active, to serve, and it can include money. But we want everybody to feel like they're part of the project as we continue to move forward. So this is, we've got some steps in place that we'll continue to execute unless there's just a turn of heart from the session at this point, because we do believe it's attainable. Now, when we were hearing the $3 million figure, I think we were thinking, gosh, we're going to have to do this in bits and pieces in order to make these changes that are needed. But now that we're back to numbers that are not making us faint, I think that we probably will proceed with the plan that we've got in place. Questions? Yeah, let me bring this back. Hang on. We did pledges
when we did the change to the fellowship hall. We made pledges and worked towards the same type of thing. I just was trying to remember what that cost roughly when we did it. Anybody know, Russ?
I don't remember that.
What was it, Barry? $260. We've not tried to do financing or anything because it's too soon, but I did talk to the denomination, and they said for our size church and debt-free and the resources that we have, that they would finance whatever we didn't have pledges for within reasonable amount, and they gave us a reasonable quote. And then other people have started to talk to their bankers, and I've started to get some information from other sources, but we're probably not to the point of talking to banks until next year sometime, if next year. I really don't know. So I'm guessing that the architectural phases 3 through 6 might take 4 to 6 months. That throws us into 2022. We hope to have pledges in place and start receiving pledges and accumulate. Then we've got to take bids. Then, unless we have numbers to show Presbyterian by the 1st of April, it'll be the 1st of October before we get their approval of 2022. So if we're breaking ground anywhere in 2022, so to speak, I mean, we're not really breaking ground, but if we're starting to do that before the end of 2022, I think we'll be going pretty fast. What do you think, Steve? Lee? Yeah. And it could be a little longer. I doubt it'd be much shorter than that. So it's a long project, and it's going to take everybody helping out, keeping us focused. Other questions? Is there anything you didn't like besides chairs in the choir area? Carolyn.
Is there any plans to do anything about our benches rather than our pews rather than put other seating in? Is there any plans to do that?
I think at this point, are there any plans to do anything seating-wise besides the pews that we're using? I don't think we've talked about it. I think that the only questions I've heard come up are, can we use the pews that we've got? I don't know. It'd be nice if we could, because it'd save us money. But because we're going from 3 sections to 2, and some are going to be shorter because of handicap length, I don't know if we can reutilize the pews that we've got and recut and reform, restain, all that, or if we'll have to get new. But would you like to be on that committee? Yes. So, but one thing I'm not ready to do is say what color it is, what the pews are going to look like, but no, I don't think we're there yet. Paul brought up a good point about the chairs, and his point was well noted by me, and because I've had bad knees in the past, and he said, you can't get out of a chair as easy as you can get out of the pew. And so I think pews are probably the better choice because of that. But I also imagine, anybody here when the sanctuary went from chairs to pews? Always pews as long as you can remember. Well, right. Some of the old chairs upstairs in some of the old rooms are chairs that used to be in the sanctuary, as I understand it from pictures, but maybe I'm remembering that wrong. Maybe Sunday school rooms. But anyway, so no, that decision hadn't been made yet. I imagine that there's going to be a lot of continued work as if we do this and get through the project, and as we get into it on are we leaving the colors the same? Are we using the same furniture? Do we get new this, that, and the other? We've said for years that there needs to be a new pulpit over there. Bart, agree? New pulpit? Oh, pulpit over here. Well, that one over there takes 3 men and a boy to move, and it falls apart on you, but it works. But I imagine that over time, that'll be stuff like that, decisions that have to be made on. I don't think anybody's talked about it yet.
Now, you've been riding me about the chairs.
I haven't mentioned the funeral home, though.
No. The reason I said about the chairs is us old folks now, I'm one of them now. When I try to get out of these chairs, it's kind of a struggle. With the pews, I can hold on to the back and kind of pull myself up. And I looked out at the charts this morning, and I know that at least 50% or more were holding on to that pew, pulling themselves up.
So noted.
Lee, this morning, that old man back there that sits next to me, he and I both pulled on that pew, and I thought we were going to pull it out from under Pete. So that's why I was wondering about the chairs.
Miriam's saying it looks better with pews. I think again, all that is flexible. Whatever we want to do long term, that's not a $2 million project to change from chairs to pews. So what we're looking at is some of the big stuff. Nancy, you got a question?
Yes, the rail that is currently around the choir loft and the organ. There's a line on here. Is that
still there?
Yeah, will it be there?
Well, I think it's drawn in.
Okay.
Lee, I think it's drawn in, isn't it? To have a half wall there anyway?
Yes, it's still in the plans. That's to make it look as much like our sanctuary as possible.
So the goal from the very beginning was make all these changes of improvement and keep it looking just like it did, and that's what they're trying to do.
One of the questions that we had asked Sam a couple of times is on his drawing here, the one that's in the hand, the stage area is arced, and the current stage is not, correct? And if I remember correctly, months back, he said that it was arched because they were continuing the arching. So I don't know.
I think those are minor things that can be worked out. Megan's point is that the drawings that we handed out show the stage is more curved than what we're seeing up here on the schematics that are on the screen. But I don't think that that's going to be an issue of structure or what, just clarification in the future. Yeah.
Is the choir loft like flat?
No. It's tiered. See those 3 steps? See those steps to the right there? Who asked me the question? Nancy. So these steps to the right here of the choir area and behind, that's how high the risers go of the choir. So the first 2 rows are level with the same floor space as the whole chancel area, and then each of those rows go up a step. The risers that were drawn in there in the middle, those weren't drawn to, I mean, they're not part of our service, just like the handbell tables are not part of our service on a regular every Sunday basis, but we wanted to know where would we put them when we had them. And so that's where they would go. That would be all open space, and the front would be open from those tables. They'd be theoretically under the stage where the piano is, and that's all open spacing, so that when we have activities up on stage, whether it's children or choir or whatever it might be, a play, we actually have space to do it in. And right now we're very limited on that. Any other questions? Russ?
Well, I don't have another question, but I just wanted to thank the committee that worked on it. And I really think it's a really good plan, considering everything went into it.
Any other comments? Steve, anything else? Lee? I'm going to close it unless you guys have something else you want to talk about. It's a joy to be part of your church at this time. I've not been part of a building project like this, so I'm not a rookie, but and I have sources to glean from. But I'm learning a lot as we go, and I'm not trying to push you where you don't want to go. If this is where you want to go, I'm with you on it. And so I think Steve said it right, that we've got to do something for the generations to follow, and it's just how much and how soon are we going to get her done. Did you want to add something, Martha?
Yeah, I appreciate the fact that we're looking at preserving what we have.
Looking at preserving what we have, and that's what we're talking about doing, making a church we can be proud of and invite others. Bo brought that up in a meeting this week. Guys, it's a privilege to work on that with you and be in ministry here with you. Anything else before we close? All right, let's have a word of prayer and let her go. Oh God, we turn to you with prayer because we don't even have all the words and thoughts and questions. But here's what we know. We know that we're in your trust and care. And we know that if we pray for your will, we should believe we're in it. And so we thank you that it is your will that our church grow and improve and become more modern and up to date while still capturing our hearts that we've grown up with in this church. We ask, oh great God, that we spend more time looking toward the future than worrying about the past, and help us to stay focused on what your will might be for this church, our buildings, our ministries, and our future. We ask your blessings upon every person here and all of the many that we reach day by day. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Thanks for coming.